This episode was made possible by our incredible donors. Their faithful support allows us to continue the work of amplifying the voices of religious abuse survivors. We committed early on never to monetize any of the stories, so we rely solely on donations from people like you. If you value the work and are able to contribute, you can become a monthly donor at the link in our show notes. Another way to support Bodies Behind the Bus is by following, rating, and reviewing the podcast. It only takes a moment, but has a tremendous impact on our reach. Thank you for daring to listen. Yes, welcome back to the podcast. Today is a very special interview where I talked to Johnna about her journeys into the SBC world. I personally had a lot of questions. I actually didn't know she was going until I saw a picture, and I was like, "Are you actually there by yourself?" And that's how the conversation started.
Okay, so, clear that up, though. He did know I was going.
Oh, yeah, I knew you were going.
Because I texted him the day
I didn't know you were
before.
by yourself.
Yes.
I was like, are you by yourself?
Yeah.
So that's right. You did. I did know that. I did know you were going. And then I saw a picture and you're by yourself. I was like, why is she by herself? So, and then my introverted heart dropped and I was like, I don't know what I would do by myself. Run away. So,
yeah.
All right. So I want to start. When did you get the invite to attend the Southern Baptist Convention? Who sent it?
I got this calligraphied, beautiful, engraved invite. No, yes. I was not invited. Shocker.
Really?
To attend this SBC annual meeting. Nor was I personally, I don't think either of us, Bodies Behind the Bus, was not planning on really diving into the SBC annual meeting this year. In large part because abuse reform has pretty much been called dead. Survivors that have been speaking out and working towards reform there have continually been let down. Promises have not been followed through on. Even stuff that the messengers voted on has not been finished. Like the database is just dead. So if you've been around for any period of time, Jay and I have pretty much resolved, we think the Southern Baptist Convention has decided to lean into wickedness and just needs to disappear. The organization as a whole is not capable of reckoning with its history, with the crisis that is going on in the sexual abuse that they have covered up. And once some of it was exposed, the ways they handled that, it's just very evident to me that it's basically a lost cause. I think, Jay, would you agree with that?
Yes, I'd probably use stronger terms to say, yeah. I don't even know if it's, I've used the word safety risk before. I just think anytime we don't deal with these types of things, we have to ask ourselves, are these safe places for our families and for our kids? Mm-hmm. And I think that's appropriate to say in this case, because we continue to have language that comes out that just seems to be more and more okay with just moving on. I think there was an article that came out about not dealing with the past, wanting to be present in the future. And I just that's so American of us to say no, we're not going to look at the past. We can't do that, especially when it comes to things, the allegations that have been levied against the SBC and the SBC churches. And then the stuff that's been documented in the reports that have come out. There has to be so much time spent going back to see how we got here and what can we do to prevent it from happening again. And going to the back and doing that research just seems to be more and more not the priority, which is concerning. So,
yeah, I mean, I think partially that has to do with they're trying to pass. It did not pass. Stuff that is going to just be so extreme in its handling of women with giftings that are in ministry. And I think that the SBC abuse crisis is led by predominantly very strong, well-educated survivors that are women, and it's easier for them to just say all women should just shut up than deal with the abuse crisis, than deal with their own misogyny and their own insecurities and their own. I honestly believe a lot of it comes back to their own fears in their own marriages. Like if I lose control, like I have to control all women, because then if my wife understands that she has some agency, that could be bad for my own marriage, and then I won't have someone who does free ministry work for me. I think there's so many things wrapped up in it, but truly, like it's been a cluster. And so we were not planning on covering it outside of maybe just like a little bit of commentating. But leading up to this year's meeting, we had two pretty high profile survivors of sexual abuse that whistle blew, key SBC figures or the crisis as a whole when it comes to Jennifer Lyell, pass away. Duane Rollins, who we have actually spoken about on the podcast. I think we talked a little bit more in depth about him in our episode about SBC and RICO, when there was a potential that a RICO case was going to come against the SBC. He spoke up about Paul Pressler abusing him as a child. He passed away from a heart attack, and he struggled with a lot of addiction through his life. And his attorney spoke out after his passing, saying that it's directly correlated with him trying to cope with the abuse that he experienced. And he was just dragged through the mud. They did not hold back utilizing his addiction and his struggles to try to discredit him as a whistleblower. And then right days before the annual meeting, we had Jennifer Lyell pass away, who was an amazing woman by all accounts that I have heard from her close friends over the last few weeks. She actually was the vice president of Lifeway up until 2020. Any of the books that are in the white Christian conservative sphere that came out of Lifeway prior to 2020, for a few years there, she was either probably editing or helping to publish. She was very influential and respected, and she came forward in 2019 about her abuser, and she was destroyed publicly. She lost her job, the way that she was spoken about. I mean, I heard accounts of people saying last time she was at an annual meeting seeking reform and protesting, that people were walking by her calling her a whore to her face. Like, she was treated horrifically bad. And in the midst of all of the reform work she had been doing, she was getting sued by her abuser, who was claiming that she slandered him or something. And so she had a stroke 2 days before the SBC annual meeting. She's young, like 47, I think it was. I might be off on that by a couple years, but young to be having the types of stroke that she had. And everyone that loved her and knew her said this is like directly attached to the stress she was under with this lawsuit and with the ways that she's been treated publicly. I mean, internet grifters that are well known in the conservative circles were already talking about how she was a liar within hours of her death being reported on. Just terrible, terrible treatment. So when I knew Jen had passed away and Duane had just passed away, and I also knew reform was dead and survivors and advocates that were from within the SBC were not going to be attending this year, it felt like it was really important for us at Bodies Behind the Bus to remind survivors that even if this whole organization that claims Jesus has said that you don't matter and that you're not worth protecting and caring for, there are people who do see you, that do see your courage and the work that you've done and that support you and that are there for you and that you do matter and that Jen mattered and Duane mattered. And it's important that someone showed up and made that statement. So that is why I was there. That was very long-winded, but hopefully that kind
Yeah.
of gives some
Yeah.
understanding to the conversation we're having today.
And I think, I mean, there's been years of people before you that came and did survivors that came and really tried to advocate for that. And, what I've seen over the last couple of years within reason is that they're exhausted by the lack of reform, but also just the lack of empathy, which I know is a toxic word now that I'm not allowed to use, that anyone shows or for them. And so I think seeing you there was telling. As I Johnna would send me pictures, and I would feel awkward for her because I'm an introvert, and being in public like that by yourself is like, I'd be on my phone. I'd be like, I don't think I could do it. But what was striking to me was like, man, it's sad because, so many people have been trying for decades to just like, for them to like move an inch, like just a little bit. And we continue to fail and fail. And then you have these survivors who went through so much that have passed away. And we can say, in my opinion, it was 100% their passing is correlated with the stress their bodies endured. And yet we still don't care. Like, we still don't care. And I shouldn't say we, like the people do care. People care about her, Johnna, the survivors, those who advocates care. But like, as a whole, the entity, the big entity in the conference, they don't care. And I think that's what was striking to me, was just the lack of like curiosity from anyone to be like, well, why are you standing there with the sign? Because Johnna would text me too, like people would come up with her, and I'd love to get in some of those interactions you had. But I would say, like, as you were standing there holding those signs, like what were you thinking? Like, what was going through your body and your brain as you were holding those signs? And you didn't know these people. What kind of walk us through what you were thinking there?
Yeah, I think firstly, you hit on a really important thing, and it is something I was thinking about a lot. And actually, when someone was brave enough to come talk to me, I talked about this a lot. I didn't know them personally. I knew their stories, their public forward-facing stories. I knew people who loved them dearly, but I didn't know them personally. And to me, a big part of what I was doing was because of the people who came before me and the cost that was on their bodies, and knowing that they had sacrificed so much and that they couldn't bear this cost this time because they had poured so much out. And that is not their fault. And it's not even a resiliency thing. It is solely the fault of the Southern Baptist Convention destroying the lives of survivors who speak up out of love for this community. The main driver for most of the survivors who spoke up, the main driver for Jen was protection of others. She went public because her abuser was going to be her alleged abuser was going to be going into ministry somewhere else. That's why she went public, was out of fear and protection of future potential victims. And to stand there and be like, I'm alone because you guys fumbled so hard. The people you should have been caring for and listened to the most was really sobering and really sad, because there have been large groups and large movements of people that had support. The messengers voted for a database. Like, there was some traction happening, and just to watch giant steps backwards happen was really sobering. And to know, like, it cost me a lot emotionally to be there, but it didn't hold a candle to what it costs to survivors who cared so passionately about the Southern Baptist Convention getting this right, and who were just so let down and harmed continually after speaking up. So that was one thing that I was holding a lot and that I wasn't shy about if someone came and talked to me. Like it shouldn't be a stranger to you standing out here. The fact that I'm here by myself should be telling to you, because the people who have given of themselves time and time again to care and to come and to seek goodness for this organization have been so destroyed they can't be here anymore. And that should be telling. Um, so that was like one of the main things I actually spoke to, because those mostly women have really given everything they have to give, and to the point of their lives at this point. So
Yeah, and I think I also think like I reread the Houston Chronicle. It's called Abuses of Faith, right? I reread that again a few months ago, and what stood out, because I hadn't read it in a few years, and I just wanted to read it again to honor the voices and the stories and the articles, and just have a chance to kind of sit with it and really think about it. And what really stood out to me this time is like patterns of like, pastors moving to other places, and behavior abuse continuing to happen at those other places, and the lack of like ownership, or even like even willingness to like for leaders to even be like, yeah, like we're culpable in this. Like, yeah, we looked the other way. Like the going out of their way to like dismiss the claims, or to dismiss their involvement. And I just like I continue to go back to like an entity or a church, an organization that centers itself on things like evangelism and Jesus and growth, and I did say growth, and I didn't even mean to say that, love, and those types of things. How they take abuse and abuse allegations with such lacks of sincerity and seriousness is alarming, but it's also striking to the core of like what their ethos really is. And the importance to me is to understand when I read those again, is to say like this is the ethos of these organizations. This is what they find important, or don't find important, and we have to like come to terms with that and say like, then what does that say about the organization? Like, what does that say about us if we support the organization? And like when I saw you by yourself and the other survivors who, there's like tons of survivors, and we can name them off, who have gone year after year after year, that weren't there. I just was like saying, like, that is the biggest statement that they are making by saying, you know what, we don't care. We had those articles come out. We had the report, and to say the least, I think that's the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion, in that report that came out, the Guidepost report. But for no one, like, that was like 5-6 years ago, for us to already like be moving past that, or not even really keeping that in front of us as the main thing, is beyond me. And I think that's really what stood out, is like, this is just the ethos. Like, this is just what it's about. And it's sad and it's heartbreaking, because because people lost their lives, because others are struggling. And yet here we are again with more money, more power, more opportunity for these churches to do the right thing, and they're not. So,
yeah. And I mean, I'm proud of the survivors and advocates, but mainly the survivors who put down the protest signs this year and stayed home,
yeah.
because they have been so used. Like, I can't overstate how much they have been used for agendas, and lied to and disparaged. So I was so proud of them for not going, but knowing they weren't going, and knowing how much Jen meant to so many of them, it just, someone needed to show up, and it needed to be somebody who it cost something different. And so Bodies Behind the Bus could do that. Thanks to your guys' donations, we were able to help get me there to have conversations. And I'm glad I went. It was really sobering. It was maybe, like, I'll just be honest, the feeling there was oppressive to use Christian language. Like, that's literally, it felt spiritually oppressive. The people who cared, which I think I can count on one hand, truly cared that were there, two of whom are journalists who are not Southern Baptists. Like the look in people's eyes was, after doing this work with Bodies Behind the Bus, there are certain things that I think Jay and I can both pick up on in survivors in moments of conversation, or especially when we're recording, we see them on video. You can see when someone is kind of like dissociating or getting really overwhelmed and they're dysregulated. That was really prevalent in the people who cared. I mean, like Ted Lasso hands, glassy eyes, staring into the distance. And I think part of that is because it is traumatic, truly, like in every sense of that word, to watch an organization as powerful as the Southern Baptist Convention, and they are very powerful in our nation right now and have been for a while, not care about the most vulnerable in their midst. Not only not care, but actively work to harm further. And the lack of connection to like the average messenger, I will say this, the conversations I had with just like the random messenger, like lanyard person walking in, they had no idea. They had no idea what I was there for, who I was on the signs, what was like one of the conversations I had with someone who was well-meaning, like everyone was nice, by the way. They were all Southern nice for the most part. I got some good looks, meaning mean looks, but one of them was like, yeah, that's really terrible, but individual churches need to be the ones to address this. And my response was, well, the convention, you voted for a database and you didn't get it. So that is actually a large scale accountability issue that is currently happening here. And you're responsible for holding them accountable by being here. And just like that disconnect alone was so jarring to me. Like thousands and thousands of people that just they have no idea. They have no idea what they are supporting, what power they may or may not have, what accountability actually looks like. It's completely, like, I would say 8 out of 10 people had no idea.
Yeah. So the database never happened, which is a big thing, right? That was a big thing that was a request. What about like the hotline? I mean, is that still around, or?
I don't even know if the hotline's around,
Yeah.
but like my gut, I know there's people that disagree with me on this, but based on the attorneys I spoke with and in general, the vibes, I don't think the hotline was a great idea. Like, no, why are we going to have more survivors calling this organization to report? Like, you guys can't even handle the ones that were the literal vice president of Lifeway well. Like, this is someone who Al Mohler agreed, like, stood with her. Al Mohler stood with Jen Lyell.
Yeah.
Like, they can't even, like, protect her.
Yeah. Well, and I also wonder, like, if they feel more empowered by, the regime that's in Washington and their connections to, the Christian right, especially the conservative Christian right, to where, is anyone really going to enforce it, or even at a higher level, like hold them accountable for it? And I don't know the answer to that, but it just definitely seems like the intensity that we got at 20, after the abuses of faith article that came out, and then thus the report, there was some like intensity for accountability, and it's every year it just continues to be like, well, let's just kind of move on to something else. And that's where we're at. When you did talk to people who maybe didn't agree, like if you, like to that point where you said, well, you voted for the database and you don't have it, I know you mentioned there was a lack of like connection, but was there anything that stood out to you about their responses about like being concerned or saying, yeah, that's a good point? Or was it just pretty much like, hey, we'll agree to disagree, Johnna, or sign holding woman that I don't know?
I mean, it was lackluster. That's what I will say. nobody they seemed uneducated about it and unmotivated to get more educated about it.
Yeah.
It was disappointing. It was disappointing. It was not shocking. It was exactly what I would have assumed would be the
Yeah.
response, but it was disappointing. And it was also really interesting, like during that time. So as I'm out there by myself for 98% of the time, Barry Bowen from Trinity Foundation, who looks into financial crimes for ministries. He came and stood with me for about 2 hours, and then Beth Allison Barr probably stood with me for 2 hours. And it was a tight 48 hours that I was there. But during my time standing there, there was actually protests in other parts of Dallas against ICE and what's happening in our country right now. And just standing there knowing like the weight of the impact that the death of these survivors is having on people that I really care about and survivors that I really care about. And also understanding that this organization that is inside this building, this huge building that I'm standing in front of, is actively co-signing and excited about what's happening in our country in the name of God, while there's people down the road protesting because families are being ripped apart and people are getting disappeared from our country. It was so sobering. I am still processing what my body felt like in that moment. I had a couple people who I care about that were in attendance, um, predominantly as spectators, who offered me to come inside if I wanted to, which would have been nice because there was air conditioning inside and it was hot outside and there was closer bathrooms, but I couldn't physically get my body to walk in the building. It felt that wicked. Like the just gravity of what this organization stands for and what they are should be accountable for is so staggering that my body couldn't even handle being in the building without, I knew I would throw up. I knew it. There wasn't a question in myself that I wouldn't throw up.
Yeah. And I think too, it's interesting that, well, it's interesting that you mentioned like at the time, when was was the convention before the No Kings? It was before No
It
Kings,
was
right?
before No Kings. It was
Yes.
the Monday before.
The No Kings.
Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I live in Los Angeles and it's been interesting. I mean, it's been sad. Interesting is not even the right word. It's been heartbreaking and sad what we've seen in our city and what continues to happen in our city. And yet, what even is more sad to me that I see on social media, and I see even there's a church down the street for me, is the lack of like, and this is not all churches, but for the most, the lack of like care and not only care but action that we're seeing from churches to not only stand up and stand against this, but to provide a better narrative about how we should be talking about these things. And every time I see people post about, like Johnna post about like the stuff on the SBC, or people post about the SBC meetings, and I see other Christian influencers and promoting books and their tours and their all these things, and I'm like, there is literal hell happening to human beings on streets that are disappearing, that are being taken without cause, illegally. Some are citizens, actual citizens, and we're just like acting like, well, let's go to the latest whatever concert or tour or whatever. I feel you when you say that, Johnna, because the disconnect that I'm seeing too, just on the Christian right and in the Christian sphere, it's so baffling to me that how we're able to sit here and just be okay with all of this. And I think that sinking pit that you feel in your stomach before walking into that building is appropriate. It's appropriate. And it's also like, this is what I always say, like, and I'm going to say this in an upcoming episode in a better way, but I will say this now since we're here. We have to reevaluate why we're spending time or energy supporting any of these institutions and individuals, because I understand that we feel like, well, it's the best church to go to, or, well, I agree with 80% of what they say. That's an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to start asking ourselves our own questions about, I'm just not going to support these people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to give them my money, and I'm not going to give them my time. And you may say, well, my money and my time's not that much. But it matters. It matters. And so again, I'll say that a better way in a future episode, but that's what, when you say these things, Johnna, like, that's what I keep thinking is like the messengers that are there. I know there's people that have pits in their stomach that are at that church, at that convention. And I'll be honest, like, you need to leave, and you need to stop spending your money supporting the people that continue this nonsense and this evil. And you're like, well, but it's not my church. Well, you know what? Your church buys into a bigger system, and that system is not taking anyone it's not holding anyone accountable. And it's letting victims and survivors and advocates just dwindle away. And it breaks my heart. I do have a non-serious question. Did anyone ask you, though, why you were preaching since you were a woman? Was that at all, like, I mean, I'm being kind of serious. Like, did anybody come up and say,
No,
like,
but
we're a woman with a sign, I don't think we can listen to you?
I was actually very calculated. Normal Johnna had so many sassy things that I wanted to be saying and doing. But actually, the sign that I made for Jen in particular was just things that her friends had told me she was, like truth teller, woman of valor, image bearer, like things that she was. I wanted to remind them who she was as a human, because I have watched survivors get put into this caricature, specifically in the Southern Baptist Convention. They do a very weird thing with survivors. And I would say, like, the culture of the whole conversation about abuse in the SBC is to infantilize survivors. So you meet, like, our interview with Krista Brown. She is a brilliant woman who is an attorney, accomplished. Like, she's done some badass stuff. Yet when they talk about her, like, conversations about Krista, even between the good guys, are like, it's almost like she's an annoying, petulant teenager who just didn't get her way. Even the air quotes good guys talk like that. And so I really wanted to, like, utilize this moment to stand there and be like, this is who she was, and y'all killed her. And you can grapple with that and just look at her eyes. So I kind of like doomsday style, I kept my mouth shut and I just followed people's eyesight with that sign silently and just kept, while like the whole convention was windows. And so dudes would like kind of like see it out of the corner of their eye, and I would watch them looking and then like look away so they didn't have to engage. But I could see them walking the whole inside. So I would just walk alongside the window with the sign, so they had to keep looking at her or Duane. But like, you look her in the eyes, because this is who you're not protecting. This is the cost of what it means to not protect and value and care for and support survivors. Her life was lost because you failed her. Even as a messenger, you failed her by not caring. I don't know how anyone sat in that meeting and was not standing up yelling. Like, I'm tired of your weird Southern politeness. Like, do something. But I also knew I wanted this to be about Jen, and I didn't want this to be a me moment where I could have been as outraged and sassy as I am on the podcast. And it would have maybe made some waves, but I think it would have centered me in that moment. And what I wanted centered was Jen.
Yeah, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting too is like I keep saying it's heartbreaking. Is that I think about both those lives and the fact that they died. They died young, and we in Christian communities always talk about like renewal and second chances and repentance and new life, and like I think about like all of the life that was robbed and stolen from them, past, present, and future, and how that in itself should cause us as believers or messengers or whatever to take pause to ask why, like why are we not talking about these things, because the very center of our message is centered around life, and yet we have individuals whose lives past, present, and future were taken, and they were taken away because of things that we did, and yet we're still just silent about it. And I agree with you with like the Southern. I mean, I grew up in the South, like the Southern politeness and not wanting to ruffle feathers. I read an article recently about moving on that was talking about something in the SBC around abuse reform, and that to me is very like I think that's a very well placed phrase to put in the South of like not wanting to like I mean, it's the ethos, it's the history of the South not really wanting to deal with slavery and the origins of slavery and how enslaved people suffered under oppression and injustices through not only once there was Emancipation Proclamation and they were declared you're free. No, they weren't, and for decades, centuries. Lived in oppressive places, and we can't deal with that. Like we can't deal with how we're culpable, how we're guilty of that, and what we did to create those systems, to enslave those individuals, to hold people under oppression, to discriminate, to not allow human beings to have basic things and basic privileges that are promised accordingly to our Constitution. Like we can't look in the past, and like this to me fits into the same type of mentality that I've seen in the. And I say the South, but it's really in white Christian America, and white Christian America is big in the South. Is the inability to want to look in the past, to just want to move on. Like we just need to move on. And that is just so detrimental, and it's so evil. It's evil. It's evil. We have to be able to go and look in what we've done and take ownership and bring repentance and true sorrow and like true sorrow and cry and wail over our injustices of what we've done so that we can move forward without them. But we continue to say, and through our own stubbornness and our own arrogance and our own sin, no, we don't want to do that. We've got to move on. So,
yep. I think that that's part of why Bodies Behind the Bus, like I think we have the ability to make a lot of people angry because Jay and I and our board are such sticklers on integrity and on doing the right thing the right way. And when we learn we did something the wrong way, like going back and making right before we move forward. And I think that kind of segues us into something that I really want to talk about that I feel like I walked away from the meeting with. And part of that's wrapped up in there was a good chunk, 10, maybe a little less than 10 of men who came up to me and thanked me for being there and said they loved Jen and they were friends with Jen. And a lot of them went to seminary with her, worked with her. She published their books. Like she was in their community. And the thing I kept thinking was, if you cared about her, why aren't you standing here? Why aren't you bearing the cost? And the issue is that my opinion that I feel like has been validated with a lot of evidence is even nice white men that are in white evangelical America, they do not have the perspective needed to understand the ways in which they utilize these systems that are harming the most vulnerable for their own benefit and they do not utilize any of that benefit. They don't put any of that benefit at risk to do anything for the most vulnerable. So you may say the right things like, we need abuse reform and we need to care for survivors. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for reminding us that Jen's life mattered. But I'm not going to do that because then I won't have a seat at the table. That's a conversation I had. I won't have a seat at the table, and it matters for me to have a seat at the table so I can change things. No. What matters is you stand the F up and you flip that table and you walk out the door with your privilege and with your money. That's what people need. We don't need one more nice white dude walking in there to make things better. Sir, you don't have the power. You don't have the brains. You don't have the perspective. Walk the heck out. And if you care about your flock, pastor, get them the heck out of this organization. You are unsafe. You are actively aiding wolves. You are not a good shepherd if you are aiding wolves. Literally, one of the people speaking at this stupid counter event, or not counter event, extra event, was William Wolf. You're aiding these men that are harming vulnerable people. And I don't know, there is no way to get it through. And I see it on the progressive side too. This lack of self-awareness from white men who think that they understand it, but will not sit their butt down for 3 seconds to listen to and even submit to or have mutuality with other perspectives that don't have the same privilege and power that you have. The reason that nothing has happened in abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention is because of these nice white dudes. They will not make the waves, and they will keep funding it. It is their fault, equally, in my opinion, that Jen is dead. Just as much as the bad actors that are loud about it. And I could not get over the fact that these people are telling me that they were close friends with her, and yet not one of them stood there with me. Not one of them stood there with me. Not one of them is posting online. And then, to make things worse, which we can talk about now, yesterday, so it's Friday, June, what is it? 22nd?
June 20th.
June 20th. So the 19th, an article comes out about Jeff Yorg, who is the president of the SBC. It's claimed that he said he doesn't think Krista Brown and Tiffany Thigpen, who our listeners have met through the podcast, you've heard their voices here, you've heard parts of their stories here, are not credible. And he will not refute that he said that. He couldn't even have the decency after Jen died to be like, what are you talking? We have voted as messengers to affirm and apologize to these women. And yet we're going to sit here with all of this evidence here and say that they're not credible, to discount and to basically say it's okay to move on with the abuse crisis. What are we doing? Sorry, that was a big rant.
No,
I'm so frustrated.
I have a question for you. I think it's good. Speaking for all the white males. So
as the resident expert in the conversation, Jay has a question.
Yes, but no, I do have a question. So when the pastors would come up and say, we're friends with, or we knew Jen, we were close with her. Did you, what was that dialogue back to them like? I know you were kind of guarded, but did you respond back with anything else to them, or how did that, I guess, what else happened in that dialogue with them?
Mostly if I responded, I just said the SBC needs to reckon with the fact that they killed her.
Yeah.
Wow. And it didn't say much more than that because
well with them probably.
Well, I knew that you're going in there and deciding whether or not I should be even outside of my home right now.
Yeah.
I don't have equity with you. You don't care what I have to say. You think I'm a subhuman because I'm a woman. And I'm sorry if you're one of the nice dudes that came and talked to me and you're like, I don't think that. You are in an organization and actively helping them to continue to grow that does think that.
Yeah. Well, I also think part of what you said too about white, the nice, we'll say the nice white male pastor, or the one that says, I knew her, or I'm standing with you, or I believe in you, or whatever. um, that is how the SBC, in my opinion, got here in the beginning. Is that they never really leaned on experts. They all tried to lean on each other to try to figure this out, and in doing so, the ones that said they wanted the change ultimately lost out to those that had more power and were like, we're not doing anything. And you are right. Like the fact that like if they say something, it not only potentially loses their seat at the table, but their income could be tied. I mean, I've heard that excuse before. Income, my family. And the thing is like I think all of those things are such horrible excuses. Like if we all believe in like I'll use the statement that has been used, against me. If Jesus was standing right here, but honestly, like if Jesus was standing right there, like would he not leave this massive congregation to go to the one person who was suffering and who had experienced like immeasurable harm? Absolutely. And so we have to also understand the fact that by continuously denying the fact, by continuously saying, oh, we believe you, and not doing anything, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite and you're supporting something that is not, in my opinion, is not the message of what you think your church is about. And that kind of thing will become an energy in your church. It'll become fruit in your church, whatever you want to say. And Johnna is making a good point that you can't be on the sideline anymore. You're not allowed to be on the sideline. And if you write a book about how amazing something is, like we shouldn't be buying your book, dude. Like, and frankly, we don't need another book out there. We don't need another conference. We don't need another Christian music CD album artist touring with their merch and writing praise songs. We don't need that. We need action from the church to care about the impacted communities and the marginalized communities and those that are being hurt. That's what we need. That's what we don't need another convention for you to raise your paddles and lanyards and do whatever you do. Get in the freaking streets and actually show that you care. And you're like, well, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. And I understand that may mean you lose your job. Then find another job. Because to be honest with you, wouldn't you have a job that you could have some integrity in, and then one that you're sacrificing your integrity every week? Because you are. But I was going to ask this too, because I think what you mentioned about, that new article that came out. Since I know that article is new, but since you went to the convention, and I know there was another article that was published after you went to the convention talking about Jen and talking about Duane that was shared. It was picked up. And has there been any dialogue from people that maybe went, that were messengers or pastors that have tried to reach out to you, or at least have dialogue of like, oh, we should really be looking into this? Like, have you seen that at all?
No.
Okay, well, good.
Absolutely not.
Way to go.
The thing is like you're saying, like, you should care, like it's time to get off the sidelines. These people, I'm sorry to like say this, that I know this is sweeping, but this is this is genuinely my experience of what I witnessed. Not only they don't know, so they don't care, and they don't care to know.
Yeah.
So it's like the lack of education on anything surrounding the most vulnerable in our country, in their churches, is so staggering that it's like, where do you even start? Because, I think that there is something going on, and this is probably a full other conversation that we probably should have, because I think it's important to be talking about this stuff. But I think part of what we are experiencing as a country right now, and it's so relevant to what was happening at the annual meeting for the SBC, because like I said, they are why this president is the president right now. Those numbers, they affect our politics in our country. But like if they pull one string, say they start to think, maybe I need to look into further educating myself about abuse dynamics and the things that the SBC has failed at. If they pull that one string, it will start to unravel the hypocrisy that is embedded and entrenched in so many of their communities. If they pull the string of their conservative politics, it's going to start unraveling and exposing hypocrisy in their church community. They can't pull any of those strings without understanding that I think they know that. I think that there is a knowledge that it will unravel to losing things that they care about, or money and power.
Yeah, I don't think they know, because our history is littered with people that didn't know, like, or chose not. I shouldn't say I don't think that. I just don't think we choose to look backwards to say, to really understand like where we've been and where we've come from. And so I think, I mean, I shouldn't say, I think that the big thing is, I do agree with you on the unraveling part. What I would say to it is that the energy it takes to just be reflective on our past and reflective on who we are, right, and how we interpret our worldview. I don't think there's any energy that wants to be spent there, because we feel like we have the right worldview, and that worldview is the only worldview that matters. And that, to me, in my opinion, is the crutch of the problem, is that for us to really, if we pull at that string, if we pull at our worldview string, I think that their faith is, and I do say this, I really believe this, because I sat in this position at one time. I think their faith is so dependent on circumstance and on them being right, that if they pull at it and they question it, their whole faith might unravel for themselves. Yeah. And I think that's more of a crisis of individuals and people that is carried over into churches and entities. And I want to clarify something. These guys should be on the sidelines, but they should use their privilege to say, these things matter, and I'm going to listen to XYZ, or we need to bring in XYZ. I mean, to be honest, like, pastors should be bringing in, they should be talking about abuse reform. They should be talking about Christian nationalism. They should be talking about the ICE raids, and not in a way that they're affirming them, because that's not not in a way that they're in their current state of how they would talk about them, because they probably are, but in a way that is Christ-centered, in a way that we should be saying that these things like the ICE raids are evil and wrong, and the abuse reform needs to happen. Here's why. That's how you use your privilege. You use your privilege to bring people in to talk about these things, to educate your flock, so that your flock knows why we're talking about these things, and you tie it back to the sacred text that you have. But you have to have flexibility in the text, because you have to remember the text was written so long ago, and it was such a different time, and it was by different context. And like, I can go off on that, and you can probably cut all of it, but I just wanted to say that was where kind of my thought was when you were talking. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think that so I am a freshly minted football mom of a couple years, and I'm still trying to understand the game. But for an analogy for what you're saying, what I really think my ideal situation would be currently in the SBC, if I could snap my fingers and change how people are engaging at this moment, survivors would be the QB. Real trained experts would be helping to coach, and pastors would be running D for those QBs. So you see a stray, you see someone coming to sack them, you're taking them out before they hit the survivor. You're putting your body in front of people who are trying to come at the survivors. You should have shown up. It should not have taken me, an outsider who loves these people deeply, but who is not one of you. I am not a Southern Baptist. To know how much it was going to mean for someone to stand there. You should have known that, Pastor. You should have been standing there, Jeff, Jorg. You should have been out there on the street with me. You should have been using your privilege as the freaking president of the Southern Baptist Convention to shut down these morons who are potentially killing survivors. I cannot tell you the number of survivors over the past 2 weeks who have said they have been trying to kill us. They've killed a few of us, and they will end up killing us.
Well, and also, like you mentioned, like the people that are like celebrating or calling her a liar online after her death, like pastors should be shutting that down too. I mean, there should be pastors online like lamenting the fact that she died and the fact that the church was culpable in this, and that we have to get this right and protect survivors. There needs to be a completely different reaction to what's happening versus what you're seeing.
And some of them are like, there is some like well wishes. I'm so sad to hear about Jen's passing. No, you need to be honest.
Yeah.
And you should have been standing in front of her, your friend, when they were throwing these strays at her and protecting her.
Yeah. And that's the privilege part that I think we're getting at, is that the pastors can't, I mean, like as a white man, like I can say things, we've experienced this a podcast. I can say things and then Johnna says I could say things and then Johnna like says something that's like 50% of what I've said and she's going to get blown up. And yet I mean, nobody's going to say anything to me. And like, that's stupid. And that's the type of thing though, when you take your privilege, like these pastors, like your privilege is going to carry weight and people will listen to it. And I'll be honest, like you don't really have any right to have that privilege. Like it's strictly, don't like get in your head because you may have written a book or something that you get that. It's because you're white and it's because you're in that position of authority and that's it. And so, but use it. Like you should use it and you should actively be using it to protect. I love that analogy, to protect the survivors and those that are coming at survivors who are leading this renewal. They're shut down. Man, what a great scene that would be if all of them were protesting. Like if all the pastors were standing there with you, protesting, holding signs, chanting, like really causing a ruckus for people to pay attention. And yet, you know, it's Johnna with her 2 signs.
So. It was. And, you know, I think, like, I guess to wrap us up, there's a lot of you listening to this who maybe only know about the SBC through stories on Bodies Behind the Bus. You're not associated with it. Maybe you're a pastor of a non-denominational church or a mainline church that's listening. Or maybe you're an author or a personality, an influencer. Like, this conversation matters for all of us, not just because of how powerful the Southern Baptist Convention is, but because the deeper issue within what we are struggling with in our country and its addiction to power and the ways that Christianity is being utilized for that, this deeper issue is infecting everything. It's infecting progressives. It's infecting mainline. It's infecting charismatics. It's infecting our government. It's infecting our schools. We have this addiction to power and this idea that we can fix it, that we just need a seat at the table. We just need these things and then we'll be the answer to it. When as Christians, God is the answer. And we don't have within our own self, like you're not the answer. The answer is we collectively and God. Like it's not you. And if we don't start wrapping our minds around this addiction and the way that it festers in each one of our hearts, especially white evangelicals or white Christians in the United States, if we don't start grappling with that, we are nothing different than the Southern Baptist Convention. It is the same root. It is the same garbage, and it will do the same harm if it's allowed to grow. So that is one thing that I hope that we all walk away from this conversation with, is being sober-minded about ourselves, about the organizations that we support, even if it's not the Southern Baptist Convention. Who are you giving your money and attention to? Who are you reading? Who are you resourcing? How are you engaging? And what tools are you using to engage? Because if you're saying, 80%, this is the conversation Jay was saying, and I did have this conversation, I like 80% of this stuff, and we don't have to agree on everything, not the non-essentials. Well, basically you're saying corruption or a lack of integrity is not an essential for you. as long as they're saying the things you like and you can co-sign this movement over here. No, the integrity, the human cost has to become an essential for all of us. It has to. And if it's not, then it's not God. It's not God. It's not godly, and it's not God's mission. It made me feel crazy being there, because I was like, this isn't just here. This is like definitely a giant contingent of it. But like, I started seeing it in my own life and seeing it in the spaces that I exist in now. Like, what are things that we are giving up integrity in order for mission? And how do I not be a part of furthering those agendas?
This content is presented for informational and educational purposes that constitute fair use, commentary, or criticism. While we make every effort to ensure that the information shared is accurate, we welcome any comment, suggestion, or correction of errors.